Hello, spiritual seeker. This is Deepalu, and I'm the creative mystic. And I ring this bell to awaken you to your divine presence that's within you every moment of every day. So today, I'm going to be talking with Damini Celebre, and she's a soul advocate. And we're going to talk about looking within, painting as a spiritual practice. Um, so Damini, I want to just give you a little bit introduction with your bio here. And Damini Celebre is known for helping women live life as their most authentic selves, to thrive, be empowered in their choices, so they can live a deeply happy life. Damini has helped thousands of people worldwide as an author, speaker, transformational coach, and retreat facilitator for over 25 years. Her background is a potent mix of healing arts, acupuncture, energy medicine, shamanism, and the intuitive creative arts. The synthesis of her knowledge came together in her highly acclaimed book, Painting the Landscape of Your Soul, A Journey of Self-Discovery. As an advocate for the soul, Damini believes deeply that when you get out of your twirly head and back into your body, you are in the flow of your soul's truth, which infuses happiness into all aspects of your life. Welcome, Damini. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, now I love this topic. When I saw the title Looking Within, Painting as a Spiritual Practice, that is how I've looked at my art. As I always tell people, oh, it's like it's a spiritual practice, painting, especially when you paint, anything of a divine soul or a divine being, it makes it even deeper. But I really want to find out what you think, is painting as a spiritual practice and how it evolved for you.
Mm, that's a long question. Okay, so painting as a spiritual practice, I think, is the practice of coming in and connecting to your own divinity or your soul. And I believe that our soul, or at least my understanding of it is that our soul speaks to us in color, in shape, in form, like all the languages that are not of the head, right? And so normally connecting into our spiritual self is a felt experience, an embodied experience. And then our body, our beautiful body, guides us on our soul's path by intuition that we talk about a lot, but also by the way that we get information. And again, that's by color, shape, form, movement, free writing, that kind of things. Like everything that keeps us out of our head, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell a little bit about your story? Because obviously your story probably is what brought you to that. This painting as a spiritual practice. I'd love to hear a
Yeah.
little bit about your story.
I've wanted to be an artist all my life. And, I've tried all the things to do to be an artist. But the art world and I never really quite gelled, because I think is a more intellectually based place. And, you know, the way I create is from this deep spiritual place in me. So I left the art journey and went over to do healing work. And I was like, that's okay. That's okay. They're both the kind of same energy. In fact, at some point, I found a quote that says, creativity and healing are the same energy. And I actually felt like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. And so, those two lived. My soul driven creativity lived here, and the healing work lived here. And at some point, I started offering classes or sharing with friends and offering with classes this way to connect in, to quiet into oneself, and then have an expression. So that showed up as some big brush paintings, like Zen type of paintings for a while. Um, but I felt like I always kept coming back to showing people how to connect with themselves and how to express that spiritual connection through creativity. And so those two pieces, I really think that spirit will keeps guiding us and keeps guiding us. And, for me, I go on the little garden path and spirit's like, no, 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 come back this way. And so I just kept coming back to this opportunity. Like I kept, thank God I'm reflective enough to realize that I was going away and coming back. And I suddenly realized I kept coming back to this spiritual path of creativity. And then 5, 6, 7 years ago, the book, Painting the Landscape of Your Soul, actually came out or came to me during a meditation. And it was like spirit going, okay, enough distractions, girlfriend, come back and unite these two beautiful parts of you to help people connect in with themselves and engage into the vitality and life force that is what we call creativity as well.
Oh,
So,
that's beautiful. I'm curious because you talked about the creativity and the healing kind of being, and I've always looked at healing as kind of letting go, and
mm,
creativity is like opening up and receiving. Like, and I'd love to hear what your take on that because I'm like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. I've always looked at it a little differently, and I love to have little ahas from other people. So, how do
yeah.
you see that as?
Well, I think, let me get this in my head for a minute. Creativity is an opening up experience, but healing, I'm a 5 element acupuncturist, and that's a very Taoist based medicine, which means that the whole role is not to focus on the pathology, but focus on the transformation. And so we all know healing is clearing out things, getting rid of limitations, getting rid of pain or pathology or whatever that is. But that's just step one. That's like the kind of roots and bones of things. But the goody is the transformation, the level of connection. And so there's where the vibration is the same. But what happened, I used to offer workshops in the lobby of my acupuncture clinic. So everybody would have to walk through this crazy wild painting area to go up and get their acupuncture treatments. And so one day I was offering a program and I was watching the energetic journey of the people in this workshop, and I'm like, there it is. Here it is. We set an intention, which is kind of like dropping that arrow into the heart of what we're focusing on, right? So we set an intention, and then they went through the journey of resistance, of letting go, of resistance, of a little aha, and then being terrified. Like that is the healing journey. And do people transform in an hour, in 2 hours, in 5 hours? Maybe, but they're just little tweaks to keep opening and opening and opening ourselves to that truest aspect of ourselves, that spirit self.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like my whole brain went, whoa, it's the same thing. And so creativity is a modality at its basic level of connecting into your soul's truth, but it's also the place where we really open because we are out of our head,
Yeah, well, when I was listening to you, it all of a sudden hit me because you were talking about acupuncture, and I went, "Oh yeah," because I've gone to several different acupuncturists. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, they're always trying to get the chi to flow." That's and it's healing. I said,
Hmm.
so it's for the first time I went, oh, click, like, oh yeah, like, cause that's what you do in creativity is, people like feel like they're creatively stuck. And I always say, well, there's only, like, well, the big main reason why people are creatively stuck is one, they're worried about what other people will think.
Right.
And that's why they get stuck. But the other thing is if you're not open to the flow of spirit, because all this fabulous creativity comes from spirit, whether you call it God, Buddha, Allah, doesn't matter, So, but yeah, when you were, I'm listening, going, oh, I get it now.
There's this really beautiful quote phrase in the really classic acupuncture text, and it says, the role of the heart basically is to allow all emotions to flow, right? So that just doesn't mean the happy, but all of the emotions, right? And when the heart does not allow for flow, that's where illness starts. So that could be at the level of the body, the mind, the spirit, emotional, all of that. And so, in a way, this goes back to exactly what you just said. Like when we when we turn the faucet on, if we will, yeah, of course, the like little debris and the kind of, I always think of streams, especially this time of year on the East Coast, like all the little residue is trying to get through and create a lot of flow in the streams. And that's what happens to us as we open. You know, some people call that like a healing crisis or something like that. But it's the process of opening, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah,
So
totally.
fun.
So that's just like really a great way to look at things now about bringing the creativity and healing together. I mean, a lot of
Mhm.
times when I would see people use art or painting as a way of healing, they would process their emotions and, make art that was not of such a nice consciousness. And I would say, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't want that on my wall.
Right, right. Well, and I think again, some people get stuck right there, you know, but I believe that the body and the soul are so um, aligned in harmony, if you will, that if we can be present with ourselves through the bumps, you know, through this processing craziness, you know, ultimately the what starts showing up is that epiphany, that level of insight, that aha, like, oh yeah, oh yeah. You know, it's that satori, if you will, that moment of enlightenment, you know, and it could be just a moment of now or feeling fully connected to yourself or the divine. And then you get on with your life and you you go on to the next level of things.
Yeah. Well, I've seen when I used to paint in the art studio. This is way back when I lived in California, but I used to go to an art studio and I went every day. And I would really see and observe how,
Mm,
like creating art was like this spiritual practice and this growth practice, and that however people painted it reflected how they were in the world. So if they were fearful to make a mistake, and if they were bold, they were more bold in their painting, and I was just like, wow, this is really reflective of like just how they are and how they are in the world. And part of that for me, like the spiritual practice, is the spiritual growth you get from it.
right.
So I'm curious if you see it that way, like with the painting as a spiritual practice, how you kind of view that and how it helps one grow spiritually.
Well, I see the painting as a spiritual practice as a process oriented, so not necessarily outcome oriented. Like ultimately you do hang these things on the wall, but if you start with that consciousness, you'll never get to where you have to go. You know, and so there's this processing, understanding, globbing stuff on. I mean, I use when I do the process painting, when this process of spiritual painting, if you will, for me, it's with kids paint and paper.
Okay.
And the cheaper the product, literally, I paint with my hands mostly, but the cheaper the product, the more uh, expansion you have the opportunity to do because you're just, you know, in the way I'm working with it is you're just trying to try something on, you know, and so normally people show up and they start with the stuff that they're angry about themselves or the stuff that's frustrating. But if we can get past that point, you know, it's miraculous because there is this huge level of opening that happens.
Oh, it sounds beautiful.
Yeah, but you know, if I get like real art supplies, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make a mess. Oh, I can't do this. And I say to people all the time, it's kids paint and paper. Just go for it. I mean, it's not necessarily gonna, well, it will affect your life, but I don't really start with that process because they'll
Yeah.
get a little confused. But it's just something to try on.
Well, I think what I like about your process that you do is one, I'm always talking about process. We have to be willing to go through the process. And one of the things I've said to my, people that are on my mailing list is, one time I said, oh, well, you have to be willing to suck to be great. And people are like, "What?" I'm like, "You have to be willing to suck to be great." I go, "Because no one's great immediately. You have to go through the process of getting great,
Right,
and so you're of using cheap products and just, letting them do it. One takes away the thing of, oh, I'm going to waste things,
right.
waste the product because it's expensive. I don't want to waste it, and two, people are so, don't you find that they're so afraid of making mistakes or doing it wrong?
Right,
Oh,
right.
I don't want to do it wrong,
Totally. And if you know, because we have all these things that will just hold us back, right? It's we'll do it wrong. It's not perfect. I can't draw a straight line. I don't know how to hold a paintbrush. You know, all of these things. And then it's like, oh well, the paper's expensive, the paint's expensive. Well, the whole process is probably a $5 combination of things per painting, so it's not that expensive. But oh, it's you just get to try it on. One of my favorite quotes in my workshops is ruin it again and again and again and again. And that's part of the spiritual practice of being present in the present moment, of listening to your body saying red paint, green paint, square, like just being right here. Because if we start to think about where we're going or any of those things, we come out of the present moment. We come out of that slipstream of spirit, if you will. And
I
you know
totally agree
that.
with you. I mean, that is so, and I love that little ruin it. It's kind of like the suck thing part, like ruin it, like let yourself ruin it. It's okay. You can ruin it. Just like do it, no biggie, I love that because our society, I think, has been so programmed that you got to do it right. You got to be your best. And then, yeah, you do want to be your best. But if you're trying to be it all the time, it stops the flow, that flow of spirit coming through. And, you know, so.
I mean, I think that if we, so you and I are talking about creativity as a spiritual practice. Our outcomes are a little different, but we're holding the same space. So if we translate that, like if everybody started yoga or meditation practice or whatever that spiritual practice is that they do, with the goal of being enlightened within 3 hours, we won't go anywhere. And I think this process of really getting out of the head and just letting our body lead the journey, because I believe our body holds the roadmap to who we are, to our potentiality. And that's a very Taoist statement, but like all of that divine light in us is in us, right? But you can't say to somebody, paint your divine light, just, you know, people will freeze. But if we hold that intention, like for a long-term process, right? And I mean probably 5, 6, 10 years in the process that I do. The invitation is towards that connecting to your brighter self, right? But you just let your body lead you. Red, blue, green, scribbles, whatever that is. Ultimately, as long as you keep following the process, of how your body's leading you, it's like little roadmaps. And I liken those little roadmaps to like acupuncture points that lead you to being your fullest expression of yourself.
Mm. So I'm just curious how, like, when you say it's your body that's leading you, and I want you to elaborate more on, like your body holds the roadmap. Like, how does people know that? Because sometimes when you're talking about it, like I always say, oh, I get these little inklings,
Right.
and I get these feelings. I'm an empath, so I get a lot of feelings. I pick up on other people's emotions and everything else, but but I don't relate it to it as my body. But so I'd like to understand more like how you're talking about your body with it, so people
Mm-hmm.
can understand like how to, what they need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. 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 I think I want to say that I think most of us are empaths. It's just a matter of how willing we are to listen. And being empathic for me is listening to my body or my intuition through feelings and sensations. And we do this all the time. Like, it's like I always say, you open your closet and what am I going to wear today? Like, there's that sense of, oh, yeah, that feels really great. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but me, it's like, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. And I think we all do this. It's like, what resonates truth for us? So that's a real simple way of showing how our body is telling us. I call it your heart's yes. But in the process painting that I do, it's you're feeling like sometimes I invite people to connect in to their body. So we'll do a body scan. And it's like, where is their flow and where is their contraction? And you can go towards either. Both are, but one's a left and one's a right, but they're going to get you to where you have to go. And so when you feel into the contraction, because I think that's easier for people to understand, it's like you just kind of feel into it. And then I recommend that you get a pen and you just draw what you're feeling. So if it's really a tight feeling in you, or if it's a big wider expression, whatever it is, we're just creating expression for what we're feeling. And that really is how our body leads us. I mean, it sounds
Hmm.
really simple.
Well, I'm curious because, a lot of I do spiritual success coaching, and a lot of
Hmm.
my clients, I'm really a believer that we've all been programmed with all these things that make you so you don't know what your purpose is, because I'm
Hmm.
really big on helping people grow
Hmm.
spiritually into the reason why they're on the planet. Okay.
Hmm.
But a lot of people come to me with, they don't know, they have no clue, and so I know part of that is it's their programming. Part of it's that, they're afraid. There's a lot of things going on. But for that person who just doesn't know, they go, oh, I don't know. I have my process of, helping them so they start to know. I'm curious what your process is, because that's a common thing I see with my clients is they don't know. And, through working with the portals and such, it's been this thing that helps zero them in and we get them to knowing. But I'd
Right.
like to know, like, is you're looking within painting as a spiritual practice part of the helping them to get to know?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So what you do, I mean, it sounds like when you're working with the people that you're coaching, you're creating a slipstream so that you all are kind of stepping into it and then you can dialogue with each other. What I'm doing is one is saying, pay attention to your body, which, believe it or not, is really hard for some people. Some people don't have a sense of even what they're feeling, and we know that because of what's happening, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. No, no, no. Totally agree with you here.
right?
Yeah.
And so, the first invitation is like, be a 4-year-old and just kind of connect into yourself. And so, where is it tight? You know, can you just do some free writing on what the tight is? Excuse me, one second. So, what's happening is, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Um, wow, got totally, let me come back to myself. Um, People don't often recognize that their body even has sensations and feelings. So the first experience is just to come in, right? And just to recognize and do some free writing. It's like, I feel in my belly, it's tight. Like any young child knows this. And so, in a way, we're almost calling our inner 4-year-old to come out just to have a little space and a little experience. But what I find really remarkable is very quickly, because there's this invitation to listen, like I think all of this is kind of, we're just holding everything so tight. And so when there's this invitation just to pay attention, the body's like, oh yeah, and we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. And because of the playfulness of the kids paint and the fact that we're not working with product, there is a little bit more space and freedom that people get just to have the opportunity to express. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the inner child is a huge part of, people have to have a relationship with that, with their inner child. And not even just child, I talk about the inner child, the teenager, that, all the different parts
Right,
of us that
right,
are, when a little emotional wound gets pushed on, that people revert to and don't understand why. But I think it's so true. I think most of society, or a good percentage of society, is really out of touch with what their body's communicating, what they're actually feeling, because there's so much, rush, 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 get to the next thing.
right.
It's one of the things why
Busy
I
as a
think,
pathology.
pardon me?
Busy, the pathology of the you.
Yeah, especially with, the thing of the smartphones and everything, people go and just keep themselves numb by looking at the
Right,
screen,
right,
often, and they don't even know they're doing that. They just think
right.
I'm playing a game or I'm this, but they don't, what they're doing is they're not wanting to have their feelings. Um, and that's one of the beauties I like, the looking within, painting as a spiritual practice, because when you take that time to go, let me, paint something and really kind of be with myself, all of a sudden these miraculous things, ahas come. You realize
Right,
where you're not happy or where you are happy or where you, know.
right. What's really remarkable too is, you come into your body. I step it down really in a small way. So first, feel your body. Um, and I mentioned this earlier, people can't connect into their divinity. It's been so programmed out of us.
Totally
But,
agree.
right? And, I feel like when we allow people into this slipstream, like you do it with your coaching and how you talk about your painting, and in this work, it's almost like kind of opening the door on a sunny day. Like, what is that expression, that Rumi quote? All you let, the crack is how the light gets out or how the light gets in. And I feel like that's what happens. It's like we're just holding space. You and I are holding space for people to come back into themselves. And when they come back into themselves, it's a pretty it's a miraculous experience, really, because they're connecting in with that soft, fragile, beautiful, delicate part that is really covered up with a whole bunch of bravado and I got it busy and all of those things.
Yeah.
But when we just allow that opportunity, it's remarkable. So painting as spiritual practice has huge layers, exactly like your work, right? First you come in and just be here right now. Like, what is it that you feel right now? Like that present moment, aha. Some people work with that for years. Some people can go to the next step of, moving through junk. And we're all used to moving through our limitations. And then the next step is like, once you have all that clear, that's where the goodies start. This is where you're really, you know, connecting into that light, like really allowing that divinity in you just to flow. And, it doesn't come mentally, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, no. I was going to ask you that. You talk about in your bio about the truly head. Why
Mhm.
don't you kind of define what that truly head is? Because I see when we've been programmed to come from our intellect, and
Mhm.
that intellect to me would be kind of like the truly head. Oh, got to figure it out. I got to analyze it all. But how would you, in your process, help people get out of that truly head, and also define it? Because I might be defining it in a completely different way than you do. You know.
I could do both. I think defining it is, I think the mind, brilliant, brilliant, keeps us, we could drive, we could do all these things, we could cook food, blah, blah, blah. But the twirly head is the world of the mind is either thinking about the future or the past,
Ah.
right?
Very true.
When we come into our heart, we are in the present moment. Great in words, but still, how do you get there? And if it's okay with you, can I offer a short exercise?
Sure.
Okay, great. Um, so I'm going to invite you all just to take a moment and feel the weight of you on your chair. If you're listening to this in the car, you may want to hold off for a sec. But feel the weight of you on your chair. If you can, put your feet on the ground. Doesn't matter whether you have shoes on or not, right? Because we want to come energetically, we want to get out of our head and back into our body. If we bring our awareness to our feet, that's one of the furthest points of the body. So we kind of bring ourselves down. And before you even go any further, know this, that when we get all wound up, our shoulders get tight, we do this, and our energy actually is up here. And, over the past 2 years, I think we've all been up here, right? And so if you just take the opportunity to feel your feet and your butt on the chair, you already start the energetic process of just coming back into yourself, right? So feet on the ground, feel the weight of you on your chair, and then just soften the space between your third eyes. Just allow your eyes to soften. When we are in a heart space or in a body space, our eyes are soft. When we're in a head space, we're kind of thinking, and we're looking. So we're coming into a soft gaze. And just take a moment and notice how you feel in your body. Notice what's present. Yeah. Now bring your awareness to your breath and invite your breath to fill up your belly. Doesn't have to be in any big or fancy way. You're going from the breath to the belly, now down to your feet. And how does that change your body? You may feel a little heavier. You may feel a little slower. You may go, eek, I don't want to be here, and float back up, and that's okay. I really think the biggest first step is recognizing, right? So all you have to do is say breath to belly to feet. Wiggle your toes. If you feel yourself starting to get tight or come up into your head, and that's like repetitive thinking. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. When you're there, you're in your head. Breath to belly to feet. I like thinking about this really super simple grounding process like a lightning rod on the house. So a lightning rod on the house helps the house not get overwhelmed by an electrical event, right? It just discharges, goes right to the earth and neutralizes. When we put our feet on the ground and we bring our energy down, we help discharge any of the static in our head. And then if we take that out further into our energy fields. So you could see I'm kind of combining like energy medicine in with some other stuff. But I really believe this connecting into oneself, or this slipstream, as you and I are kind of calling it. It's like first you have to come out of here and come back and inhabit your body. Our body's this place where we access our senses, where we can really access our intuition. And I think our senses help guide us. You know, um, People talk about six senses, like those clairs. I don't know if you talk about that in your programs and stuff, but like
Yeah,
these,
clairaudient, clairsentient,
yeah,
clair,
I mean,
there's a whole list of
that,
them.
right, that happens when we're back in our body. It's like our kind of senses extend out more. So, like, we're still filtering them through our body. Otherwise, we're just spirits floating around. We have to have the body.
Yeah, I really like that little exercise. I mean, I could feel the difference just by, like from, when I'm trying to just get on and get the podcast going and all that, I'm like thinking of all the things I have to do, and just me taking that few moments to like feel my feet on the floor. And, I feel like kind of just sink into myself. I felt solidly in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone's listening to this when they're driving and they can't do it, I highly recommend stopping, when you
Yeah.
stop to try it, because I noticed the difference. I was like, yeah. And of course, when you take that quiet moment, you always notice, like, do you have any tension? What's going on? And yeah, I always say awareness, like you talk about as recognition, is one of the first steps to spiritual growth, to,
Mm-hmm.
transforming your
Mm-hmm.
life, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can't transform anything if you're not aware of it or recognize it.
Right.
So, so
I think
yeah.
we have this crazy notion here in our contemporary European culture, right? That um, we can get to things really quickly. You know, I want enlightenment. I want to be a guru, whatever those things are. And we kind of bypass all the work. Like we start here
Yeah.
and then we bypass it and we want to be here. But the juice, the real self-discovery and epiphanies come in that in-between state. If you talk to any spiritual teacher, once you get here, what is that expression? Then you start chopping wood and carrying water again. Like just start the process again. But I believe part of the healing of this process is creating muscle memory. Like if you do breath, belly, feet over and over again, your body starts to recognize the cues, right? You start with a gong when you start this process, this podcast, which kind of tells everybody, oh, yeah, we're coming into sacred space. Like
Hmm.
there's all these little series of muscle memories that we're creating, you know, that set up the potential to be into this spiritual practice, to be into this slipstream of allowing space for the divine, the universe, whomever that is, to move through us. That makes sense. I feel like I got really esoteric there, but
No, 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 it's true. I mean, I ring the bell because in India, they have this tradition that they have it at the entryways of their homes and buildings and churches, no, temples, I should say more.
mm-hmm.
And they ring to say like, hello, God, and I ring it to at that moment so you can connect with that divine presence within you. And did you notice like when it was ringing, it just all of a sudden your energy comes in and you feel centered, and
Right,
yeah. And so that's, your exercise of what you just brought, everyone into. I felt like kind of did the same thing, slightly differently, but still like brought yourself into your body so you can feel like, okay, what am I sensing? Because I think so many people are so busy, they don't sense what's going on, in our five senses without being spiritually aware. They go outward, to all the things that can distract us and engage us into something outwardly. And
Mhm.
one of the things I love about creativity, because it puts you in the flow, and I don't know if you feel this way, but it really brings you into this inward flow. Like what's coming and what are you sensing to like what color to paint to put on. I do that with my sacred art. Like
Yeah.
I get a sense of like I have a vision, but then I get this sense of like what I'm feeling through of what I'm putting on there. And even
Mhm.
sometimes I put a color on there that I think looks horrible. I'll and my intellectual mind or the truly head will think it's a mistake, I think what
Mhm.
you talk about. But then I go, the next thing I get intuitively to put on there, it's like, oh, that made it look so good.
Right. 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 And then I think I recognize this happens with your paintings as well. Once we have that physical experience while we're painting or creating, right? It doesn't just stop in the time that we're creating or making art. Because we're energetic beings, it's actually changed something in us, and then it changes in life as well. So if you feel a bit more expanded and open and centered and calm at the same time while you're creating, that's going to show up in your life as well. It's like that's the beauty, I think, of creativity. It's not just here and now. It kind of cascades energetically into all aspects of our lives. Um, I've seen people have told me that when they are touching onto like maybe they just connected into a really bright part of themselves, and somebody will then say the next day something that re-engages that bright part of themselves. Like I feel like it just creates this energetic cascade out there in the world. But I believe the first step is just coming out of your head and back into your body.
Yeah. No, I love
Yeah.
that you communicated that because I don't think, and I can't even say that I honestly consciously thought about that until you said it. I was like, oh, she's so right. Because, like people think, oh, it's just art. And so it's something insignificant sometimes. I'm not
Mm,
saying everybody thinks that, but I'm talking about the people who aren't artists, think that. And so, but by doing this process that you do, or the process of like what I do of creating sacred art, it actually changes you, and
yeah.
I just have to share this with you because it shows concrete evidence to what you have said. With the pandemic, I haven't gone out and promoted my G clays as much and stuff because we're doing everything online, and
Right.
on Zoom. So I had been really busy with coaching clients and I hadn't been painting as much. And finally, I got myself to paint. And I painted and I had this really great time. It felt really connected and painted. And the next day, G clay order came in. I hadn't done anything different except paint it.
That's it. That's
Doesn't
it.
that
That's
represent
it.
just exactly what you said?
Hmm.
Yeah, I just
Hmm.
you were saying it, and I'm like, she's so right about this. I have physical evidence that just happened a little while ago where,
Hmm. Hmm. In the Shipipo people in South America, I'm going to shift into a little shamanic conversation for a minute, but the Shipipo people believe that the art that they create whole is spiritual. So it's not that it represents a drawing of, and I think your paintings have that kind of feeling to them. They are actually holding spiritual power. There is
oh, that's
holding
yeah, that's my whole
spiritual
intention that
essence.
I have. So yeah,
Hmm.
what were these? What you called them? What these
The
Indians or
Shipipo people,
People? Okay,
they
not heard them.
sew these patterns that are the patterns of uh, they call them the songs of life, songs of the moon, songs of healing, songs of, but they're vibrational drawings. And most shamanic art is really just holding the energy of. It is the energy, and in in painting as a spiritual practice, I do this one exercise where I invite people to, do the process of coming in, connecting into their light, and then drawing a symbol that represents that light, right?
Ah, I
And I
like
think this
that.
has a lot to do with what you do as well. And so when they're drawing that symbol, symbol, they're infusing, because they're in that slipstream. So they're infusing that symbol with the energy. And then every time they see it, it kind of realigns your energetic being to that light. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? There's
Yeah,
like a
I love that because one of the things I always say in my podcast, greatness is within you. It's time to let it out. And it sounds like
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
um creating that symbol is like a reminder of here's your greatness. Here's your, because your greatness is your light, your divine light within you. That's ultimately what it is.
mm-hmm.
And we have to do a lot of things to get there, but yeah, I was like, I love that. Sorry. I love that. I was like,
Right.
oh, yeah, that's like the thing to help, remind them that here's your
Mm-hmm,
greatness. You have
mm-hmm.
it. Let it out. I love
Right.
that.
Right. And how beautiful that your peeps can sit and be present with you listening or in person with you and just say, yeah, I have greatness in me and I want to let it out. Because some people are terrified of that. But how beautiful to just give people the opportunity to say, uh-huh, it's right here. I always think of the paintings of I don't know what they're called, but Jesus and Mary are always pointing. They're pointing at their heart in
Oh,
these sacred art. And I was raised Catholic, so the way I was raised, it was like they were saying this is their goodness. 60 years later, I translate to that being a representation of this is the light inside you, too. You just have to kind of find a way to get to it. And I think that's what you do in your art and what we're trying to invite people to connect in with as well.
yeah, and that's what you're doing in your process, right? With the artist,
Hmm.
you're really wanting to help people bring that light out. I mean, ultimately, it might first be healing, which I really believe that in order to let your greatness out, healing is part of that process.
It
And
has to be.
yeah, when people try to bypass, like I tell people, sometimes they try to spiritually bypass, the healing part. And I'm like, it doesn't work.
Right,
You
right.
have to work on healing, letting go of the wounds. And, so I love that. So your process starts with the healing process of like just listening to the body, right? It was what I was getting and recognizing and doing this painting
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
And then as it continues, then you kind of go into how they create um, it's almost like a logo, a symbol
Right,
that's a representative of their divine light. I love
right,
that, the way it
right.
weaves through to that.
Yeah,
So, out
because
of
that is
curiosity,
the
what I
healing
know
journey.
everybody's different, but what does the average person take before they get to that process where they can actually do something like that? And you're probably going
Uh,
to say you don't know, but I'm curious. This is
no,
how my mind thinks.
it's actually that's funny because I was just thinking I have created when the pandemic started, I created these programs online. And so what I wanted to do was offer this program that was a 6-month program called Luminous Journey, right? And that was the bypass.
Uh
And I was like,
huh.
I can't do that because that's where I want to play now.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do that because there's all this stuff that we have to go through. And so I've created like a 21-day program and an 8-week program to get to Luminous Journey because I feel like we need the tools to we need to learn the tools for ourselves to keep navigating towards our light. And if you bypass that, you're just going to go you're just going to fizz out.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
see that a lot with people. But if you take your body with you, if you take your being with you and you retrain your muscle memory and you clear out those limitations, because we have to, they're just taking up gunk space in us, then we can get to the place where we can really play. And that is like every day owning, being, living your light, and people can do that in the very beginning because painting as a spiritual practice is a 5-day or 7-day downloadable class, and that's where the name came from. But in that there is that little 5-day journey of connecting to your light. But it's a process.
Yeah.
you know
No.
did
I
that
love
answer your
that.
question? Either a
Yeah.
year, 20 years, 50 years, a week?
Well, yeah, I know it's different for everybody, but when you work with clients, you start to see like, okay, typically this is like what it takes, and I tell people I never want to limit people because if they come to me for like helping them reprogram their subconscious programming, I tell people if you're like 40, 50, 60, and so I get clients that are in their 20s and 30s a lot. In fact, I get more
Oh,
clients that are in that age that are really wanting, but even if it's 20 or 30, they've been doing this for 20 or 30 years,
right.
most likely it's not going to change like that. I don't want to limit you, I'm a hold that can be changed quickly, but if you've been doing something for numerous years, those neural pathways have been firing that way, and we have to help develop new neural pathways, so
Right. Right.
it can take a little bit of time, so
We're doing like, what is it? Spiritual neuroplasticity.
exactly. That's why I have programs. Just like that's why you have these programs,
Right,
because yeah,
exactly.
it's not gonna you're not gonna do it for an hour and it's gonna be gone, at least most likely. Not, so we're trying to look at where people are and how can you help them with, where they
Right,
are.
right.
Yeah.
And the thing that really like about, or what I've noticed when you follow the body, because the body's going to really guide the process, people have less of an opportunity to burn out, to fizz out, to have a spiritual awakening that is not pleasant.
Yeah.
Because the body is holding, I really do believe the body only takes us as far as we can go. And sometimes that could seem super scary, but if it shows up when you're in this present moment time, in this slipstream, then you are able to move to the next step. I mean, I always think our inner critics show up when we're on a precipice of change. It's like, oh no, we are not going there, but it only is showing up because we're ready to transform. And I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I know what that feels like.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I mean, I tell people when, like your subconscious mind is rearing its head and trying to stop you, that means because you're getting close,
Yeah.
because it doesn't want you to change, and so
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree with you there. That's and when people think it's going to be easy, that's when they give, and it's not, they give up, and I'm like, no, the process is not easy for most people.
Right.
It could be if we didn't resist things or stroke, but we do. So
Right. And I think the beauty of creative healing or using creativity for healing is it helps us. Um, there's all these things that help us set up into the slipstream of our goodness, and it helps guide us from there. But because I don't think we can get there from the mind, we can
no,
only get there. And the creative process is just, it's an embodied process, and we're working with the unconscious or the subconscious.
yeah,
And
no, I
that's
totally
that's
agree
where
with
our
you.
soul
Yeah, we can't.
dialogues.
People think that the Western society really is into intellect, 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 and that's how we're going to
Mhm.
get there. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, it's not our intellect that's going to get there. We need our
Mm-mm.
intellect. It's a good thing. You don't want to not have it, but it's not
You
going
got
to
to drive
get
a
you.
car, right?
Yeah, it's not going to get you enlightened. It's not going to get you true heart's desire. You
Right.
know.
Right.
So that's so good. That's so true. Well, I just
Mhm.
loved what you were saying, Damini. And so, where would people go if they were interested in you? I know you have a lot of different programs here. Um, and I didn't know if you had anything, and if you don't, that's okay, but that you wanted to give away to kind of introduce them to you. I know you
Mhm.
said that they could go to your website, DaminiCelebre.com, and I'll
Mhm.
be putting that in the show notes. But is there anything you had that anyplace else or?
Yeah. Well, you can go to DaminiCelebre.com is kind of like the hub, and I do some intention work on Clubhouse. I do a podcast as well called Connect In. But the in DaminiCelebre.com is where you can find everything. So, what I like to offer you all, and I'll make sure that you have this as well, but if you can, what I'd like to offer you is a book called Your Heart's Yes. And it's a book on how, it's a small booklet with a meditation of how to really connect into that bodied sense experience and start to listen to how your body guides you. And also, I think what I'll do is add a chapter from the book Painting the Landscape of Your Soul that's painting as a spiritual practice, because I think that'll give your peeps some language, some dialogue of where we've been traversing today.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for giving that gift to people, you know.
Yeah.
So, um,
And
th-
yeah,
thank
it's
you for being here, Damini. Thank you to everybody who's listening, and for you, for those of you who resonate with this, please give a thumbs up or subscribe, and also go to DaminiCelebres.com to go get your free item. And I'm be putting all those links in to the show notes. And please, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, feel free to comment and, you know, send some info because we love to hear any kind of interaction with you. So, any
Mhm.
last words you want to say, Damini?
I am so delighted to be here and have this conversation with you. It's just so juicy. Thank you.
Thank you. And so
Hmm.
just remember, everybody, greatness is within you. It's time to let it out.